Okay.
So I'm going to start the recording now.
I'm recording, yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome to this ongoing series of empathy circles hosted by Empathy Tent, created by Edwin Rudge, who's here. My name is Jessica. I'm going to be the MC and one of the facilitators today. Edwin and I are going to co-facilitate this empathy circle today on climate change. So our intention is to bridge political and social divides and to build a culture of empathy with this an amazing tool that we call empathy circles, which we're going to explore later. Our wish is for each person to be heard and understood to their satisfaction, to build a mutual understanding, and to share our common humanity. And we really want to scale these empathy circles up and hold thousands of empathy circles online and also train more facilitators. So please talk to your friends, invite people. We'd love to really make this a huge movement. Like I said, we are recording all the empathy circles. So for people watching, for you viewer, we invite you to take part, and it's free. There's no need for prerequisites. You can visit empathytent.com or empathyscircle.com to join or to learn how to become a facilitator if you want to. So let's go around and share our name and where you're calling from, and if you're comfortable with it, your political leanings. I can start. I'm Jessica. I'm originally from France, but I'm living in Toronto right now in Ontario, Canada. And I lean towards more green and left on my political leanings. Edwin, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. I'm Edwin Rutch from San Francisco Bay Area, just in El Cerrito near Berkeley, California. And I grew up conservative, evangelical, fundamentalist conservative, did a lot of traveling, kind of moved to the progressive side and now moving to the empathic side.
Al, if you want to go next.
Yeah, my name is Hal. I'm calling from Berlin, Germany. And yeah, my political leanings, yeah, I guess they'd probably be considered radical green, radical left.
All right, thank you. I'm going to follow my screen. So Evan, if you want to go next.
Yeah, my name's Evan Magor. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. And I've always identified as liberal, but I really just lately have been studying a more of a needs-based approach, so trying to care about everyone's needs.
All right, thank you. Kirsten, sorry, not Kristen.
Hello, Kirsten. Hello, can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you.
You're very red.
You're very red, yeah.
So I'm Kirsten. I'm calling from Potsdam, Germany. I don't very much like the identification of left-right because I think it's kind of outdated in some way or not applicable in many circumstances. If you want to somehow categorize me, I guess I would be more on the left, green, whatever side.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you. Bill?
My name is Bill. I'm also in San Francisco in the East Bay. And I used to say I'm on the left, but it's complicated.
Yeah, and I see Michael or Michelle? How did you pronounce your name?
Yes, my name is Michael. I'm
Michael.
from Maine. Yeah.
Yeah, where are you from, Michael?
I'm from Maine, and
Maine?
I live in Tokyo.
In Tokyo, wow. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here. And
thank you.
I guess I like to say I'm from the Unity Party on the left side. Yeah.
On the left side. Okay. Thank you. Ali, if you want to go next, we're just sharing our names, where we're calling from, and if you feel comfortable, your political leaning.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name's Ali. I'm from Toronto, and political leaning. I guess just for simplicity's sake, I just say left.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for joining us today, everybody.
Glad to be
so
here.
Before we jump into the juicy stuff, I hope everybody had a chance to look at the instruction. If you don't, that's okay. We're going to go through quickly today. I wanted to share the definition we have about empathy circle for everybody to be on the same page. We are defining empathy circle as a small group of individuals like us today who speak, listen, and reflect back to each other. And then the reflection back to each other is very important. And we are using a time-structured format. I'm going to go through quickly the instructions, and I will model it with Edwin for you to know a bit more how it works. I know Billy is very experienced. I know some people never done that before, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. So the instructions, there's really 5 main big steps. Number 1 is one person is selecting who they want to speak to first. So as the speaker, you're choosing who you want to speak to. The second step is you can then speak to whatever comes up for you, or as for today, the topic is climate change. How do you feel about it? But you can also go off topic if that feels right for you. And the speaker and the listener have their time together for about 3 to 5 minutes. So Edwin is going to do the timing. So he's going to show up a paper when you're going to be able to see. It's going to be like, that's going to be you cue that we would like to invite you to wrap up if possible. We are timing because we really want fairness in the group and for everybody to have a time to share what they want to share. The step number 3 is as the speaker speaks, the listener, the only responsibility the listener has is to reflect back to the speaker what they are hearing until the speaker feels as much as possible heard and understood. So during that exchange of 3 to 5 minutes, the speaker speaks and the listener reflects back, and it's a back and forth like that until the 5 minutes are up or before. Then once when the speaker is done, this is the listener's turn to decide who they want to speak to. And it goes on and on like that. Everybody helps to hold the circle process by monitoring and sticking to the steps as much as possible. Edwin and I, we would like to have an agreement with you guys that we might jump in to help and guide you if we feel that it's a bit off of the process. We do believe that the process works, and so we really would like to invite you to try as much as possible. The first time I feel weird and awkward, that's totally normal. And to help with that, actually, I have some tips that I wanted to share with you for the speaker. But before, I've been speaking a lot. Is there any question before I go and continue? Everything's good?
Yeah, it's good.
Awesome. A few tips about the speaker. Try to pause and not to have a long tirade of long sentences. If you can pause and give a chance for the listener to reflect back. So try to keep it short as much as possible, of course. And to give the cue for the listener, you can say, oh, okay, I'm feeling fully heard. I'm good. I'm okay. Thank you. And then the listener can get the cue that this is their turn to speak and choose someone else. For the listener, your own responsibility is to reflect back in your own word what you're hearing the person say. We strongly want to invite you to refrain from asking questions, judging, analyzing, advising, sympathizing, or getting into your own your own storytelling. For when you are listening, keep your opinion until this is your turn to speak. I really want to emphasize that because we are all very curious beings and we are super into wanting to share our opinion. And when you are listening, really focus on the person. It's not your time to share or speak. When it's going to be you can share whatever you want. For the other person in the group, you can stay silent. On Zoom, you can mute yourself if you want as well, and you can be just observing what's going on. One thing I want to add, one last thing I wanted to add is it doesn't really matter if there's a a topic or something that someone says that really is super important to you, and you want to speak to that person, that's totally fine. But we want to refrain from going back and forth between two same people. If I'm talking to Edwin and Edwin wants to talk me back, we would like to invite you to try to choose another person, even though the person who said something that you want to reply to is here. We want to do that because we want to avoid that two people are just going to focus on their topic and not invite other people. Everybody's going to hear what you're saying, so it doesn't really matter if a person says something you want to reply to that person. It actually doesn't matter in an empathy circle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, little bit of logistic for today. We're going to be about for 2 hours. We're going to stop 15 minutes before the end because we'd love to hear your experience about the Empathy Circle. We are harvesting testimonials to be able to promote what we are doing. So we'd love to hear what you hear at the end. We are going to post the recording on Facebook and on YouTube, and also on our websites, empathycircle.com and empathytent.com. Anything else for the logistics? I don't think so. So I am good to go. Edwin, if we want, we can model the instruction that I just explained so that you guys can see a bit what does it look like.
Perhaps we could just break out into the groups. So we do 2 groups, and then we could start with being the listener in our group and just get right into it. Because I created 2 groups, and so when you go into your group, you should have permission, Jessica, to record yours. So this one's already recording.
That works with me. You want to go on in groups right now?
Yeah, I think we're ready. Get right into it. And you just mentioned the topic.
Yeah, the topic is how do you feel about climate change? So we kept it very vague intentionally because we really want to hear what's going on for you and where you're at in that topic. It can be whatever works for you.
Yeah, and anything else that's alive for you. So there's the topic and whatever is a kind of a burning issue for you. So we're going to open the rooms right now. And
you're gonna see a host is inviting you, so you click on join breakout room.
Hello.
Okay, hi.
How you doing?
So great. So we can get started. I'll keep time 5 minutes per round, so we can get started. Someone can speak to me, and I'll just sort of model the empathic listening just for the first time. And just, how do you feel about climate change, the whole topic of climate change? Whoever would like to start?
I'll start. It's
okay.
Confusing part is I've got a buddy back in Maine who doesn't believe it's true. My one friend who's into Trump. I was kind of beyond that. I thought it was already sort of assumed that it was the science is behind it, but it's confusing for me because he keeps saying, he's disputing it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is living in Japan, there's just so much plastic. It's like an addiction to plastics. You'll buy a banana and they put it in a plastic bag, and then they put that bag in another bag, and it's like, no more plastic, no more plastic.
Okay, let me reflect out what I'm hearing so far. So first, there's sort of a confusion with we have a friend who's a Trump supporter, and he's sort of denying it, and you're just confused. You thought that the science was already, pretty well established. So and then the second point I'm hearing is that living in Japan, maybe some frustration with all the plastic there. So, bags within bags within bags. So just a lot of plastic.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that reflection. Yeah, and the other thing that comes up is just I see a lot of plastic in the ocean, which is really disturbing when I travel around. Yeah.
So feeling disturbed by all the plastic you're seeing in the ocean. So
yeah,
another kind of an issue.
Yeah. Thank you for that reflection.
Yeah, is there more? You got 3.5 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'd love to create community leadership projects around the issue of the the use of plastic in stores. To get people to get the stores to replace plastic bags with like paper bags or recycled bags, have it be like a community coming together to take an action. And I don't think it'd be that hard to do. I do a lot of leadership development work, and I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing in organizations for leadership, we can bring to the streets and get people to come together. So something I've been thinking about. I haven't really taken much action on that, but that would be something that would be really fun.
So you're thinking some kind of an action you could do that would be enjoyable and maybe have a sense of community to it is, bring a community together to take action on the plastics and the climate change kind of issue. But you haven't quite started that yet, but just thinking about it.
Yeah, and it would be, it could be like a win-win deal where the stores save money because they don't have to pay for the bags. And it raises consciousness on the issue, and it gets people engaged, part of a community.
So you see it could be a positive thing. You get people engaged, kind of do community building, and you see that there'd be some benefits for the stores too.
Yeah, exactly. And then with social media, we could promote the activity to other communities, at least in Japan and outside. And so that's something I think about often. Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of like thinking of some strategies to address the climate change issue, and you have already kind of different kind of ideas around that using social media, community organizing, and so forth, but still haven't quite, just thinking about it still and haven't quite taken action yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Is there more, or do you feel fully heard?
I feel pretty heard. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then I will speak to Kirsten, I guess, if that's...
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, great. So what's on my mind about it? For me, it's, what's coming up is I remember living in Indonesia and just seeing the rivers there, just being full of plastic and garbage and sewage, and it's just, it was pretty grotesque just seeing that's like the worst of climate change and in pollution and so forth. So that's just an image that comes to mind.
Yeah, so you're remembering the image of plastic and sewage in the rivers in Indonesia. And you said it's grotesque, so it's maybe you're also feeling shocked about that it could be that way.
Yeah, so bad. But for me, the more the issue is how to get people talking with each other, across the divide, with Michael's friend who's, climate change denier or what have you, and how to get the different sides to talk to each other so that the whole issue isn't so polarized.
Yeah. So you're really wondering about how to get people from the different sides to talk to each other and maybe come to some consensus or more shared perspective, so it wouldn't be so divided and polarized? Yeah,
it's more there's this consensus, but the discussion takes place within a more empathic context. So that there's an empathic context that the dialogue can take place in, and I think that would be able to lead to, better solutions if it's not so polarized. So, yeah. You'd really like the dialogue to be more empathic as well, so that people don't only understand each other on an intellectual level, but on a heart level, maybe. Yeah. And the other thing is I think the people who came today are more on the left, sort of climate change. So we don't have the other side here that's kind of adamant. And I would really like to have more of a, adamant, climate change deniers or what have you, be in the group to kind of add to that, sort of to that tension. Yeah. I'm hearing that maybe you're a little sad that right now we don't really have the full spectrum of climate change deniers and climate change believers. I don't know. Yeah. it adds a little bit of spark too. When everybody kind of thinks the same, there's not that kind of that energy and that spark. So I'm kind of hoping, got to work harder to reach out to those that community.
Yeah. You'd like sparks in the conversation. Yeah. And also maybe some, I don't know, maybe you're confused about how to reach out to this other community and reach them so that they're going to come, like people against climate change or something like that.
I've been reaching out a lot to the right, so it's not so much confusion. It's just it just takes a lot of work. And we've been doing, with our empathy tent, we go to the left-right demonstrations, and here in Berkeley, there's been some real, everything from Antifa to the farther right, and battling it out. And we've been there with the empathy tent, so I've connected with all the sides. But it's like getting the right into an empathy circle seems a little harder. So we still need to figure that out to get the right involved more.
Yeah, you want to figure out how to get the right involved also in the empathy circles here online.
So, and I have a couple of leads too. So people who say, "Oh yeah, I'll do it," and I just got to keep after them. So, so it's in the works.
Yeah, you're hopeful that in the future it's going to become more this way, that there are going to be more people from the right or the other side of the spectrum.
Yep, I feel heard. Thank you. Fully heard. So now it's your turn to select who you like. Yeah,
Ali, do you want to listen to me?
Of course I do. I'm all ears.
Yeah, I'm. When I really get into the topic of climate change, I feel pretty devastated, especially also around biodiversity loss, which isn't only linked to climate change, but also many other topics. But like it's very much linked. Yeah, it's just so scary to think about, and sad also to think about all these different species just disappearing forever.
Well, what I'm sensing from you is you just have this awareness of our place on this planet and our effect on what happens to not just us, but to all the other species that live and that share our planet with us.
Yeah. There's so much life and so much beauty in it, and I would really like to keep the beauty kind of, and I'm very worried that it will go away, or that a huge part of it will leave in some way.
I'm sensing that this is something that really affects you. This is a deep sadness.
Yeah. Yeah, and scary because I don't know what's going to come. I'm very certain that we're heading for crisis, and it's going to be some kind of collapse in the near future. Collapse of societies, and I don't know, it feels unreal in some way, and on the other side, I'm pretty sure it will come.
It's like a nightmare that you think it can't be real, but that with every passing day, it seems like more and more things are happening that are making it real.
It's more also because it's so. I mean, I feel the effects. The last year, 2018, has been crazy in terms of weather, and I noticed that there are less insects. I noticed that maybe there are even less birds. And still, I cannot feel the collapse yet. So it's something. I mean, it's the future. I can only feel what's right now. So it's so vague, and it might be that it's not coming, and maybe it is. I don't know.
What I'm reflecting on what you're saying, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel like you're conveying a sense of, almost helplessness to what can be done to change this or improve the situation.
Yeah,
That
I
we
don't.
as individuals are helpless.
Yeah, I don't feel so much hopeless because there's so much I'm doing. It's more an acknowledgement of that there are things happening that I cannot stop and nobody can stop, and they're happening, and it's just a huge sadness that this is happening. And yeah, and more wondering about what we can do to deal with the things that are coming. So how to really build resilience in some way.
Mhm. I understand. Thank you for clarifying what you meant there. I understand where you're coming from now.
Do you want to just reflect what she said? Just what is your understanding of what she said?
Yeah, sure. So, well, what I understood is that, like, my perception was that there's a sense of helplessness, but Kirsten is actively trying to do things to change the situation, to combat the effects of climate change. But she's also aware of the realities of the situation.
Is that it, or is there more?
Yeah, it's the huge sadness about how it is as well, and still this wondering, how can we build more resilience kind of across communities, within communities, to kind of create a web of connections that can somehow survive in some way the hardships that are going to come.
So what I'm reflecting on is that you're actively thinking of what ways can we work together and find solutions for the challenges we're going to face.
And build resilience, I was hearing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the 5 minutes. So, Ali, your turn.
Okay.
And you can select whoever you'd like.
I'll talk to Michael, I guess.
Hello.
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, Michael.
Okay. Hi, Michael. So, in a lot of ways, I feel very, very much like Kirsten. But I would say probably the two words that really express how I feel are, when it comes to climate change, are frustration and anger. And I'll give you I guess an analogy of how I feel. So I'd say the human race, I would compare the human race to, say, a student who has this really big deadline and they have to do all this work and read, say, 200 pages. And they have to get this done by next week. And instead of just, the practical way or the more, reasonable way to do it would be, I'll do 20 pages a day, and that way I'll get to the 200 pages and I won't have too much work to do each day. But instead, and this is what the human race is doing to combat climate change, we're just putting it off, procrastinating, not doing anything. And then we're just going to hit that year, we're going to hit that time period where, holy shit, tomorrow's the deadline and I still have to read 198 pages and it's already too late. And I feel like there's so many people, I'm almost done. I feel like there's so many people around the world who know this and they can sense it, but they just keep on procrastinating it. And that's the frustrating thing, that so many of us know, but it's just not enough to get the ball rolling, in which, okay, we're going to do those 20 pages for today.
Yes, I heard you say, like, you resonate with Kirsten's concerns, feeling frustration and sadness around this issue, specifically around the procrastination. And you made a comparison to college paper. We wait till the last minute to write the paper, and you feel like humanity is doing that right now. Like we all know it's an issue, but there's nothing really happening. We're waiting till the last minute, and that creates a lot of frustration and sadness in you.
Mhm. Yes, for sure. And we had that whole, which was like, I was very happy to hear about and read about the Paris Climate Accord that was a few years ago. And I would compare that to, okay, we all buckled down and sat down as a species to, okay, I'm going to commit to 25 pages a day for the next couple of days. And then the next day happens, and then, well, I kind of want to hang out with my friends. Well, I really want to see this movie. I've been waiting to see this movie for a while. So it doesn't happen. So this is where the frustration has that we're doing these things on a, massive global level, but the follow through seems to be absent.
So I guess you're sensing some encouragement when with the Paris Accord came up, but then when we pulled out, it was like, it didn't happen. And I guess it sounded like we're sort of building momentum, but then it would sort of drop the ball, using my words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got you.
I mean, to use another analogy, I would say this is the thing that we as a species have to combat. I'll use the example of, I always think about this, Alberta. I'm not sure if you're all in Canada or not, but Alberta's economy is very dependent on fossil fuels, has been for a very long time. And it's because of the fluctuations of fossil fuel prices, shortages, embargoes in other parts of the world. Their economy is so tied to it that when things go up, everything's good. Things go down, people lose their jobs, people lose their homes. And we as a species, we can't seem to get out of this, short-term thinking of, what's good for us and what will benefit us. And we often just take what's our short-term gain and don't worry about the long-term costs of it or what the long-term gains could be if we sacrificed a little bit now. I see that with Alberta, where there just seems to be this stubbornness to change the way we do things, to change the way our economy works in a way in which we won't be as susceptible to the collapse of one thing. And I feel like that's like a microcosm of our entire species. We're so geared to the short-term thinking, and that's really what I want to fight.
Mm. So yeah, you mentioned the analogy of the city of Alberta in Canada, right? And how this is dependency on the oil industry, and it's up and down depending upon how the price of oil, I guess, and how that's a microcosm of humanity not looking for the long term, very short term based, and how everything is sort of I definitely resonate with that. But yeah.
Okay, that was 5 minutes. So Michael, it's your turn to select.
Just keep going.
Just keep going for the time allotted. We have about an hour to go.
I could just what's the woman's name again? Kirsten? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So continuing on that front, I definitely it's a good point. It's really it's what I believe is needed is a whole new mindset, for people to think more systematically and not in the short term, like he said, or long term, be more sustainable in our thinking and systematically, and start to create these webs of interconnections across borders, and so we can really see the impact that our actions have beyond ourselves. I think that's part of the solution.
So what I'm hearing is you'd really like probably all humanity to develop more of systematic or systemic, thinking, so that we can kind of begin to see the effects, probably also creating a web across borders to see the effects, and I guess it's also related to this part around people not doing anything and finally coming around to doing something about climate change. Is that what you're concerned about?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and I just think the mindset is so key. You know, the whole get beyond dualistic thinking, like left, right, good, bad, being judgmental, but in really understanding that, you know, we're all connected. The earth is a living system. And if we can see that, and, you know, and not just think of economic gains, make decisions based on the economy, but find a way to contribute that will serve everybody, and not just for money, but because it's the right thing to do, and somehow get some value out of that, you know.
Yeah. I'm hearing you'd really like everyone to understand that we're all interconnected, that the earth is a living being. And tell me the rest again.
Oh, the mindset piece about, you know, non-dual thinking.
Yeah. So that non-dual thinking, so that people actually like coming out of the either or, also like finding the ground in between, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with that kind of mindset, then we can really start to get some traction, and we're not acting out of fear or obligation. And, you know, there is a sense of urgency for sure, but it's more like coming from joy and wanting to contribute. I think that's really key. And then again, we can get off the economic models where so much of, you know, the free market thinkers, which I can basically believe in it, but sometimes it goes too far, because it's not going to solve all the solutions, right? Just having a free market, like the economy, like the environment, is not doesn't look like an economic solution. You know, it's got to be another way to come together. So
you'd really like the motivation to come from joy, not from obligation or fear. And you're thinking about also that the economy we're currently having and the free market is nice, but obviously not helping the climate. So you're thinking about that we need some kind of system change?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Thank you. Very well done.
Okay. So, Edwin, would you like to listen to me?
Yes, I'm listening.
I resonate a lot with what's been said. And I've also been thinking about that. Obviously, fear is a really bad motivation for people to actually come around to do anything about climate change. Telling them about how many meters of sea level rise we will have, or by how many degrees Celsius, I don't know, the temperatures will rise, or anything like that isn't really, for some reason it's not motivating them, probably because fear is not a very good motivation. So yeah, I'm thinking about having joy, maybe even love for the planet, for life as a motivation would be more, maybe it could help.
So you're resonating with what's been said so far, and seeing the aspect of fear is maybe not so good of a motivator, like just having, you know, facts, sea level rising, and, you know, all those kind of fear-based approach. That maybe there is another way of more of a joy, you know, a care, sort of a motivator for joy and care.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the earth is such a beautiful living being. And I think that most people would agree if asked, kind of. even people denying climate change.
Mm-hmm. So beauty is the world is beautiful, and even people who are denying climate change may see the beauty in it, and so maybe that's like a motivator there, the seeing the beauty of the planet.
Yeah.
Is that it? Or?
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time, I'm also very worried by the fact that so many people know, and probably how are we going to get enough people, enough mobilization, so that we can actually change the momentum?
Mm-hmm. So there's a sort of a worry, like how to change the momentum, and so how to really make that change, or kind of just sitting with that question, how to do that.
Yeah, how can we actually find enough people willing to face the dire facts in a way, and willing to change something and to come together to find different ways of compare different to what we're doing right now.
So you're just sort of sitting with the question is how to find these people, how to find enough people to take a different approach than we're taking now, and just sort of sitting with that question of how to find those people.
Yeah, and also I'm already quite hopeful, and I feel completely hurt, and my daughter is coming to me right now, so let's switch.
Okay, so your daughter's trying to talk to you, so we'll move on. Then I will speak to Ali.
I'm listening.
Oh, great. So yeah, this stimulated some ideas, especially about the thinking intergenerational and the systemic that was coming up. So for me, the intergenerational made me think of sort of an intergenerational empathy. That we can empathize with each other, be aware of each other's feelings, and we can also think of empathize with future generations. There's like children. What's their life going to be like? And we kind of empathize with them in 20, 50, 60, 100 years or 200 years. So it's really empathizing with future generations.
And what I'm hearing you saying, Edlund, is that this dialogue that we've all had together has been very stimulating for you. It's got you thinking about ways we can empathize with each other. One of those ways is, thinking of future generations and our impact on them and what we can contribute to that.
Yeah, so the topic of fear came up, and when we're afraid, we're just thinking of the immediate fear, the immediate situation. It's hard to think of other, to have that openness to, connect with, others. So, yeah, so I guess that's, so it's, for me, it's like, how do we create a culture of empathy and spread that thinking, more broadly?
Just reflecting on what you're saying, you correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to use an analogy. That what you're saying is that there's something about fear that makes us become introverted and build walls, but empathy is about breaking down those walls and reaching out. Exactly.
That's a good, very good analogy. It fits, yeah. And then the other is the systemic thinking, right? Is that we're in a system and that we empathize with everyone in the system. So that's, so it's, for me, the core, the motivator is really how to expand that empathy to the whole system, to others. So there's and to future generations. So I guess I see that, and that's what we're trying to do here with these empathy circles, right? It's like we're trying to get people to hear each other and kind of expand that empathic way of being.
My understanding is that you just you're very motivated to spread this mode of thinking and this way of a method of discourse to as many people as possible, no matter where in the world, what background, what viewpoint, what worldview.
Yeah. So, and how does that apply to, climate change, concerns about climate change? I think it starts with just dialogue, bringing people together to dialogue with each other about it, sort of like what we're doing here. This is like the first step, and then sort of expanding the dialogue to hear the voices of people that are concerned, don't accept climate change, or that it's man-made, human-made.
You see this kind of empathy circle as an important stage, so we can start dialogue, so we can move on towards action, to reaching out to people who don't see climate change necessarily the way we might, or that might be more realistic.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that maybe blocks people, they're like climate change deniers perhaps, or is that they feel that they're not heard by people who are for climate change. They don't feel like they're heard, and it's like, okay, you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm going to take the opposite sort of stance and get really entrenched. So it's sort of the listening, the mutual listening, that sort of transforms that knot that kind of happens.
My sense is, I'm just reflecting on what you said, interesting viewpoints, that I feel like you've put yourself in the mindset of somebody who is a denier and seeing things from their perspective. And I see that as a great way to initiate a dialogue.
Yeah, and it's kind of seeing that they're part of it is that they're not being heard, and that's part of the block to the change. I'm just speculating, like for Michael's friend, right? Maybe it's like, well, you guys aren't listening to me, I'm not going to listen to you, and take the opposite contrarian position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying, that there's people who just to mention the analogy I used earlier, that they get defensive and they build up the walls, especially when it's about something that's as heated as this.
Yeah.
Only speculate sometimes.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you. That's awesome. My time.
Okay. Great. So what's next?
So it's your turn. It's your turn. You select who you want to speak to, and we just keep going. We have 45 minutes at least, or a little bit more. 50.
I'll talk to Kirsten if she's good to go.
Yes, I'm good to go.
So, what I've been thinking about a lot lately is what can be done, what actions can be taken. And I recently volunteered for the Green Party in Ontario. That's actually how I met Jess, who's the facilitator. And it was interesting to see. I walked with somebody who was running for member of parliament. So I'm talking to so many people, so many doorways. It was fascinating to see. He wasn't talking about how are we going to change the world, how are we going to combat rising sea levels. He was talking to people about $2 parking surcharges and talking about putting tolls on certain highways. And it made me realize that we can have all our ideals, but when we come down to the practicality of what we need to do, we kind of have to step away from the ideals a little bit and get people talking with little things that they can understand that impact their day-to-day life.
So I heard you volunteered for the Green Party, and one thing that was particularly meaningful was some person that talked to other persons, and he or she talked about like small things like putting tolls on some streets. And so you're thinking about that when we want to move forward, to kind of move away from our ideals a little bit towards the small things that can actually be done and that are practical. Is that it?
Yes, exactly. And like, I'm as a person, whenever I hear there's a problem or an issue, I just think of what is a practical solution to it. What can actually be done within the constraints of the world we live in. And when it comes to climate change, I have this concern that there's a thing that I've often heard said, that one of the main ways we learn and grow as human beings is through struggle, and struggle necessitates some suffering. And I'm just worried, is that what it's going to take for us to learn and grow from the challenge that we're facing.
So you heard that one of the main ways we as humans grow is through challenge, or being challenged, and you're also linking suffering to that to some degree, and you're worried or thinking that what's it going to take for us to learn what we need to learn, and how much suffering will there be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, a few of us have mentioned fear, and fear is a motivator, not the best one, I would say, and it has massive repercussions. Struggle, I think, is a good motivator, and when I look at people all over the world who, I would say, from an individual level to group, community, government, nation level, aren't doing enough, it seems to me it's because they haven't struggled enough, they haven't suffered enough, so they aren't, because of that, they don't have the motivation to do something about it. And what I'm wondering, is there a way we can motivate people that isn't fear related, that isn't struggle where you have to do this or else it's over? Is there something else? That's what I'm wondering right now.
So you're thinking that one of the reasons why people aren't doing anything is because they haven't been affected by struggle enough, that they're not struggling enough. And you're really wondering whether there's something different that can be motivating for people apart from struggle and apart from fear, because fear isn't working, that can motivate them to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. And for this question, I honestly I can't think of an answer. I mean, what would work for people? What would work to actually, get millions or maybe hundreds of millions of people around the world to just go, you know what? I'm going to do something different today. I'm not going to buy the things I used to buy. I'm not going to throw away the things I used to throw away. I'm actually going to vote to make those changes happen. I'm not going to have politicians who aren't focused on this anymore. And I would say this is the thing that I'm trying to figure out, the main thing. How do we get people to do that?
So you're kind of still sitting with the question of how to actually have people change what they're doing. Millions of people around the world probably changing what they're doing in some way.
Mm-hmm. Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions, yeah.
That's what it's going to take. Yeah. I feel heard. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you. So, Michael, would you like to listen to me?
Sure.
I'm kind of still. I'm kind of thinking about this. I'm in the sentiment of screw politics. The system isn't working, and I mean, we knew over 30 years ago that there was climate change, and there is consensus kind of in the science, on the science side. If like, as far as my horizon is, at least there's consensus in science that there is climate change, and it's linked to us humans. And so since there's, I mean, it's clear and proven, and we've known, and governments have known, I don't think that we can rely on them. And it's something that, like, we need to build something different, something alternative that doesn't just rely on politicians finally doing what we or the world need, and just create change in some different way and build something different.
So yeah, I heard you say, and maybe it's time to forget about politics. We've known about this for 30 years, yet it's very little that's happened. There's pretty much consensus in the scientific community that climate change exists, and there's the human element to it. And the last part I faded out. Can you repeat that last part?
Yeah, to just do something like on our own and create the change, instead of waiting for politics or anyone else to change something.
Yeah. So we can't wait for politicians to make the change. We need to just we need to do it. The people.
Yeah. Really. I mean, and the questions of how to do it, and mobilize so many people still remains, but it's very clear to me that that voting will not be enough. Because even if we vote right, whatever right is, not the right side of the spectrum, not like, no, but even then, I mean, it's very the system is so broken in a way that I don't trust that the necessary changes will be made.
Okay, so yeah, you're saying voting's not enough, and the system is so broken that it won't. That's not enough just to vote.
Yeah.
Something else is needed.
Yeah, and and at the same time, kind of holding politicians accountable in some way, and really, I mean, they have power and not neglecting that they have it, but still not relying on them to make any changes, going forward and inviting them to join us in a way.
So we still need to hold politicians accountable for their actions, but it's not enough. It's more likely they need to follow us. Like, we need to take action and sort of show them the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you for sharing.
It's your turn now.
Oh, my turn?
You select someone, yeah.
Okay. Who hasn't gone yet? Let's see. The guy from Alberta. What's your name again? Ali?
Yeah, it's Ali.
Ali.
I'm from Toronto.
Oh, Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, I just mentioned Alberta.
Okay. Yeah, I just made the assumption. So that was sort of consolidate different solutions. It seems like what I've heard so far is, for the people to lead and the politicians will follow. A new mindset is needed. One of non-dual. It's connected with the earth. A realization that we're all connected. It's a system mindset. And anything else that came up? To take action now, not to wait around. I think those are the main points I heard as far as solutions.
Yeah. What I've heard you say is that your reflection on the importance of a new mindset, and you've mentioned this a few times now, that I have a sense that getting away from forced dualities is something that's important to you. And what's also important for you is connection to each other and to our planet.
Yeah, and just for clarity, it's more like these are the things I've heard in our conversations as far as solutions. which I agree with. I also personally think these are the solutions. But another one that hasn't been spoke of yet, which has really helped me, is the I've recreated my relationship with the plant of marijuana, which has been amazing. I had stopped for about 20 years, but now it's legal in my state of Maine. So I've just reacquainted with it, and each time I do it now, I create an intention, so it sort of makes it a sacred thing. And the impact on me has been that I feel like I get information from the plant, kind of, and I really have more. It helps me to be connected with the plant, and I feel like that's going to be part of the solution. Maybe not necessarily that specific plant, but for people to be, yeah, I think that's part of the solution, is to, for those who choose to do it, is take on that ritual, and it can really help to really understand that we are in this living ecosystem. We're part of it. We're not separate, and to listen to Mother Nature. It's really important.
So what I heard you say is that you left marijuana for a long time in your life. You said 20 years, and you returned to it, and it almost has this ritualistic, profound impact on you. And it's a way of connecting with Mother Nature through this plant, and that's something to ground, to connect all of us. Not necessarily marijuana, but plants.
Right. I think, yeah, I do think marijuana is very uniquely special, because it turns out we have a cannabinoid system in our body. So there's an actual system in the body that connects with the system of the plant. There's no other plant like that. So I think it does play a very important part. But it's, the reason I stopped years ago is because I got very paranoid, because it was more, I think it's because it was more fear-based, and it was just, it was recreational. And I sort of went down this downward spiral. And then sometimes it still happens, but now I have a meditation practice, so I'm aware of, I'm like the observer. I'm watching what's happening, and I'm sort of curious about it. And so when I have those downward spirals, I pull back, I don't let it take me. So, obviously you need to be careful with it, but it's been very positive. I think that will play part of the solution, I think, globally.
So what I heard you say is that you left, you kind of shared with us a little bit about why you left marijuana. Back then it was more recreational, and it had negative fear-based effects on you. But now it sounds like you're armed with a bit more wisdom in life, and you channel it in a better way now that feels more productive, and is a way that could be more productive as a solution for the issues we face as a species.
And part of that has to do with the fact that it's becoming legal now. Before, you had to do it in secrecy. You would never talk about it. The fact that we're talking about it right now is a breakthrough, right? We could never talk about it before. No research was allowed to be done on the plant. So it's that's really exciting for me, that change.
Yeah. You're excited about how marijuana just had this negative stigma around it, where you'd smoke it in hushed corners or something, and now we're actually talking about it in the open. It's getting legal everywhere. It's a breakthrough.
Yeah, definitely.
That was 5 minutes.
Perfect.
So is it you now, Edlund?
It's you. You're the speaker. You can select me. I haven't spoken for a while.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you speak to me.
Oh, I speak to you. Okay. All right. Okay. So I found a lot of what Kirsten said very interesting, and I completely agree. With her that just because of the time constraints we have, voting. See, this is I'm conflicted about this, because voting isn't going to make a difference in time. The system that we have does need to change. It's broken, very clearly broken. The thing is, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a practical person when it comes to these things, and the way the system is designed and built, the only thing I feel like would get rid of the system in a way that could impact change in our world is if there's some cataclysmic event that, irrevocably changes all of our lives. probably for the worst in the short term. And so I feel like we do need to figure out ways to affect change within the system, because it's not going to go away in a quick enough time.
Okay, so you're seeing that the system is broken. You're agreeing with a lot of what Kirsten was saying, and that that the way that the system would change maybe only under sort of a catastrophe, kind of something really bad happening, but then there's going to be kind of this negative consequence, and then, you know, it'll kind of, maybe some change will happen. So I wasn't quite clear if it was like with Kirsten, you're saying that you have to work outside of the system, or if it sounds like you have to work at both. So it wasn't, okay, both. That's okay.
Well, we have to find. See, the thing with the system is, and I'm not going to get into like abstract details about it, but a lot of it is geared towards power, and we're at a power imbalance now, where the power structure is that the powers that be, the ones who control resources and the governments, are the ones who have say in things. They hold sway, but we outnumber them. We are the ones who have the actual power, and I think we almost have to work outside the system to consolidate our bases of power, so that we can be the ones who take charge, basically, within the system to change the system. Very abstract, I know.
Yeah, so you're feeling that you got a model, and you're kind of joking that it's abstract, but it deals with power, that the system is about power, and there's the people in power, and but the real power lies in the citizens, and that the citizens need to kind of consolidate their power and then sort of change the system through bringing that power into the system, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It almost sounds like paradoxical. The thing is, like I mentioned earlier, the only thing that will get the system to really drastically change its behavior is if we all rise up, hundreds of millions of us, and just make the status quo unsustainable, and just to ground it more in reality, what that could look like. It's, you know, protests, marches, strikes that are done on a global level in a way in which the world actually shuts down. And I think if we could do that as a species, where we have, you know, so many of us all, if not necessarily with the same leader or the same hierarchy, but all these spontaneous movements all over the world, that would change things.
So you're really looking like how to change the system, and it's for the citizens to have strikes and protests and marches, and to rise up and then sort of transform or overthrow the system in a sense. And that's what it's going to take to bring kind of a new awareness into the system.
Yeah. I would say, just my viewpoint on the future, and this is speculation obviously, is that change is going to happen. We are going to adapt to climate change. And I think there's two avenues where that will go. One is the cataclysmic approach that I mentioned earlier, where there's just a catastrophe and maybe billions of us die. I don't know what life on our planet won't be anything we could identify today. Or we figure out a way in which we can use the power we have to affect that change before having to deal with, you know, some kind of, you know, disaster. That's what I really want to do, that approach. Yeah.
Okay, so you're seeing that humanity will adapt to climate change one way or another, and there's kind of like two routes. One is sort of the catastrophe model, and then people will adapt because, you know, the catastrophe will happen, then they'll have to change. But the other is a more gradual approach where there's an we adapt as humans to that climate change, and there's that issue is addressed. And that was 5 minutes too. So, okay, I speak to Kirsten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me hit the timer. So what I was sitting with was the motivators. You know, because I heard different motivations: fears, struggle, suffering, beauty, joy. And for me, the motivator I'm looking at is empathy. You know, can we have empathy be the motivator, and how do we build on empathy as a motivator?
So you, for what I'm hearing from you is that you heard all these different motivators, and you'd really like to look at empathy being a motivator and how that is possible, how to build on it as a motivator.
Yeah, and I'm hearing strategies of that we need. You know, like marches, protests. And something I've been thinking about is a different type of a protest that's based on empathy. So it's instead of you know, going and saying, you know, we want this, it's like we want to have a dialogue, you know, with the people who are in power. And not only a dialogue, we want empathy circles with the people in power. And so it's like the empathy circle, and empathy is sort of is the end and the means. So yeah.
So you're thinking about using empathy as the end and the means, kind of, instead of going on the street saying we don't like this, saying hey, let's have a dialogue, and actually having empathy circles with the people in power, and kind of have that effect change.
Yeah, and it would be also the demonstrators would do empathy circles instead of some, you know, people up there kind of speeches and everybody, you know, shouting. It's like, you know, you have a few little speeches, but then everybody divides into small empathy circles, and it's an empathy circle dialogue with the people who are kind of protesting.
So you're thinking about kind of staging a huge empathy circle event with a few speeches. and then having empathy circles just everywhere around in small groups, kind of.
Yeah, and I've been thinking of this, like with our state assembly here in California, is that we would go to the state assembly, set up our empathy tent. We've got, I don't know if everybody's seen our empathy tent. Go to empathytent.com to see it. And we set up the empathy tent there at the state capitol, and we say we want all legislators, you know, assembly members, to have empathy circles across the political divide. So we want 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, you know, to come together and have an empathy circle on how do we overcome the political divide. So the means are the end. It's just about getting people to start talking with each other.
Yeah, so you really want to kind of facilitate dialogue between the different divides and kind of set up maybe an empathy tent in the Capitol and have the legislators, the people, I don't know, senators, whoever, talk to each other, and figure out how to bridge the political divide. Yeah,
that would be like the first topic to talk about. And so I actually did that here. We had the state assembly, you know, people running for the state assembly in our district. And we had 12 candidates. I brought 11 of the candidates together at UC Berkeley, and we did 2 empathy circles. We divided them into 2 groups and had empathy circles with them, actually doing what we're doing here, and talking about how do we overcome the how do we build more empathy. So the topic was using empathy circles and how do we create more empathy in society.
Okay. I'm hearing that you already did a project where you got together 11 people somewhere at university and had them do empathy circles and talk about how to create more empathy.
Yeah, they were the candidates running. Yeah, they were the candidates running for the assembly. So they were running for office. Yeah. They were city council members. One of them was a mayor of the city. I mean, so they were already political officials who took part in this.
Yeah. So it was people who were running for the assembly, and I'm hearing that maybe these events make you hopeful that something is possible.
Yeah. And it's also a strategy of what to do, that the empathy circle, what we're doing, is the strategy of kind of moving forward, into the political system.
Mm-hmm. So you really like the strategy, like using empathy and empathy circles as a strategy for moving forward.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. Ali, do you want to listen to me?
I do.
Yeah. I'm also feeling hopeful right now because I'm involved with Extinction Rebellion in Germany. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
It started in the UK, and it's a movement very different to all the movements I've met before. And what I really like about it is the part actually about building regenerative culture, which at the heart I see at least to be it's definitely based on empathy, and it's empathy and I don't know connection between humans is the foundation in a way. Yeah, and really caring for like all levels, for yourself, for the connections between people, interpersonal, within communities, for the planet, and I'm hopeful in a way. Yeah.
I hear you saying that you've explored movements in your life that have this focus on empathy. And you mentioned the culture, but the line broke out for a second, so I didn't catch what the culture was called.
Regenerative culture, they call it.
Okay. Regenerative culture. And you just see this as a way to make connections and to just be empowered in every possible level of yourself and through others and through the world as a whole.
Yeah, and kind of being aware of the power dynamics, also using nonviolence and nonviolent action as a way to get people to have a dialogue, because nicely asking, sometimes people don't respond to if they have more power. Yeah.
I hear you saying that you're aware of the power dynamics that exist in the world, and you are interested in non-violent ways of affecting change, but you're also aware of the fact that sometimes people who have power won't listen.
Yeah, and that's why I think non-violence is needed as a force to demand to be listened to, and to demand to have a conversation, and then have empathy.
Okay. So you're saying that you feel like non-violence is a way in which you can demand attention and demand being listened to, and that is a way in which then you can have empathy for each other.
Yeah, and just kind of so having change on all levels is something I'm thinking about. Like nonviolent action is just one part, the other part being doing something different right now. For example, like holding empathy circles and I don't know, using reusable bags instead of plastic bags, or I don't know, the different things you can do to already do something different, and then also really affecting consciousness change, this change of this awareness of how interconnected we all are, the living earth, and kind of creating a different basis for all the changes we're trying to create.
Are you saying that non-violence is one method, one tool that we have at our disposal, but it's just part of a whole concerted approach that includes, things as simple as using reusable bags, empathy circles, and even a change in our consciousness. So it's the change of our viewpoint through our consciousness, in the way in which we see how we're all so connected to each other.
Yeah, the different levels are kind of, one is stopping things that we don't like. The next one is doing already something different in the way we would like it. And then the third one is the consciousness change that kind of helps support the other two in a way also. Yeah.
I hear you saying this, there's these different levels of things that we have to stop doing, things that we should be doing, and it all kind of works together. It all meshes together.
Yeah, kind of. It's important to not just focus only on one level. It's important to, I mean, not every person needs to focus on all the levels. There are definitely, I don't know, talents or whatever is most important to you. And at the same time, globally or for the society, it's important that we work on all the different levels to create sustainable change as well.
I hear you saying that we each have our talents, and we don't necessarily have to all focus on the same levels, but we together as a species can do our parts to bring this about.
Mm-hmm.
That was 5.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing, Kirsten.
Thank you for listening.
So, it's me, Edlund? Sorry.
It just keeps going.
Okay, it just keeps going.
It
Okay.
just keeps going. We've got about 20 minutes or so.
Okay. All right, would you like to listen to me, Edlund?
Okay.
All right, great. Again, I found a lot of what Kirsten had to say very interesting. I really like the idea of how we each have to do our part and tailor it to our strengths. And I think that's really the way, the realistic way where we can affect change. Where we each, talk to as many people as we can. We reach out to as many people as we can. We use our passions, whatever they happen to be, to reach out to people any way we can.
So you were resonating with what Kirsten said, as well as that we each need to take our own personal action, reaching out to people, talking to people, and using our strengths that we personally have to kind of make those changes.
Mm-hmm. Just to use me as an example, I'm a writer, and I find that the power in stories is what they give you is a chance to just see something from someone else's perspective, or put yourself in another character's shoes. And I would say that is one of the strongest foundations of what empathy is, to be able to put yourself in your shoes. And I think through stories, they don't necessarily have to be written. They can be movies, they can be documentaries, or anything, is a way to get people connected with others, to get those other perspectives.
Mm-hmm. So speaking from your own skills, as a writer, you're seeing that storytelling is a powerful way of conveying empathy, that you can step in other people's shoes and convey what it's like to be in other people's shoes. And it can be with writing, movies, just any kind of a storytelling format is good for that empathy building, fostering empathy.
And just to expand on that a bit, I think that you don't even need to be reading a story that's, from Hitler's perspective of his struggles as a watercolor painter or whatever when he was a teenager. I think if you just start seeing the perspective of people who are closest to you, most similar to you, that's a way in which it opens like this new doorway in your mind, where you start seeing people who have slightly more different perspectives, and so on and so on. It's like a trickle down approach.
Mm-hmm. So it's really about it. Yeah, it's really about expanding our perspectives, being able to see the world from different points of view. And you don't have to be the most extremist like Hitler or something. It can be just the people around us that we start seeing the viewpoints from the people just around us. That's already like big.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that's again like a realistic way of reaching out to people. You don't convince people by just showing them a complete counter view. What you might do is show how, okay, there's all these views that are very similar to yours, and then you can almost show them the step-by-step process in which, oh, you can get from here to all the way over here.
So one way of sort of affecting people is to show them other people's perspectives, and also the journey of how do you get from one point to the other. Yeah,
exactly. You always have to talk to people in terms they understand and things they value first to bridge the gap.
So you have to connect with people first, where they are, maybe what their needs are, what their situation is, and then from there you can show them how going from that point to another point, so you can kind of convey that to them. But you first have to connect where they are.
And I think a key way to do this is really just to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I'll mention just like this little anecdote. I'll keep it short. A friend of mine asked me the other day, like, how could somebody like Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator, do such terrible things, kill so many people? And what I said was, he is part of him and the ruling families are part of a minority, a religious minority that has been historically oppressed. And when they got the chance to come to power, they did anything they could to just hold on to that power, because they're thinking about their families. It comes from love. Like, how can we protect our families? How can we never be oppressed the way we were for centuries again? How can we safeguard our way of living? And I think there's ways to do this with this is an extreme example, which is why I use it. Even with the most extreme, terrible people in the world, you can empathize with what their viewpoint is. Nobody's just, pure evil. So I think if you can do that with someone like a dictator, you can do that with pretty much anybody.
Okay, so someone was saying to you, why would Bashar al-Assad, why would Assad do what he's doing? And you were kind of explaining that you could empathize with him, that you could understand that he's an oppressed minority, and that they're wanting to protect his community, and and all just really to understand where he was coming from. So, and that's what we can do, is kind of understand where people are coming from. And that was 5 minutes too. So, okay, then I'll speak to Michael.
Okay.
Yeah. I really am enjoying this, because I just see the connection with empathy. Because I'm really seeing that the culture of empathy is sort of like a new framework. That I would like to sort of move forward in the culture, and I hear like echoes of that in what everyone is saying.
So I hear you say you're enjoying the conversation, especially this reoccurring theme of empathy, and how that can be like a culture of empathy.
And that the motivation, the motivation of empathy, that feeling of connection and understanding with people, it feels good. It's a nice motivation. It's subtle. It's not so. It's like not all passionate and anger and all that. It's kind of a more subtle, but it also feels very good, because it's. So I just see it, kind of just understanding people can be fun, it's enriching, and connecting with people is enriching. So, but it's subtle, it's subtler than, like fear and anger and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So especially like the fact that it's subtle, it's not like passionate, like fear is, and it's connecting, and what the other things you said, connecting and
feels good. Yeah.
Feels good.
And then how, like Ali is saying about storytelling is a way that conveys, has this connect with each other. So that kind of ties in as well, that storytelling is good for making those connections.
Mm. Yeah, so storytelling, yeah, it's good for making connections as well.
And like Kirsten and Hal, they seem to be kind of activists. And I've been trying to, actually, Ollie is activist too. I've been wanting to connect with activists who would be interested in sort of moving sort of an empathic approach into the activist field. Because I want to take the empathy tent and set up at the state capitol and actually do this, where we set up and we say we want empathy circles with the left and the right. And we're here, we're not moving. It's an occupy empathy, basically, like occupy empathy. Or an activist empathy. It's kind of like what Kirsten was saying, is that people will not listen. It's like you can talk to your politicians, they will not listen. I'm all for sort of a nonviolent action, but that it leads to dialogue, that the activism is for an empathic dialogue.
Mm. Yeah, so you're excited for the using activism and empathy together, and whether it's with a tent or empathy circles at the state capitol, and the other people. Well, we also talked about activism, but combining that with empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You broke up a little bit there, but I think you got it. So I do. I have talked.
Did I capture?
Yeah, you captured it. Though there's a state. The person that won the election for our state assembly. I asked her if she would do an empathy circle.
My battery might be dying.
Oh, it could be your bandwidth. If you want to turn off your video, that might help.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Are you still there? If you turn off, maybe his battery went dead. You still there, Michael? I think we might have lost him. Okay.
Okay, I'll jump in this.
Okay. I got about a minute left. So, yeah, it looks like his battery went. So, yeah, I had talked with our state assembly member, the person who won that election that I mentioned. The person that won, she had a sort of a little town hall, and I raised my hand. And I said, "Would you have an empathy circle with the Republicans, in Sacramento?" And she said, "Sure, I'll do it." So I'm kind of working at kind of getting that organized.
Yeah, I'm hearing you celebrate that you talked to the person who got elected to the assembly and asked her if she would be willing to do an empathy circle with the Republicans, and she agreed. And so yeah,
that's in the works. And then our congressman Mark DeSaulnier, this is the national federal congressman. We've been talking with him about doing an empathy circle too, so we're trying to arrange that with him and some Republicans. So kind of trying to move that forward.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you're thinking about how to kind of move it forward. I didn't quite get
to move it forward, to have empathy circles. I would like to have an empathy circle with 2 Democrats and 2 Republican Congress representatives from the United States in a circle like this, and then they talk about bridging the divide.
Yeah. You'd like to have especially dialogue between Republicans and Democrats. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm working at it.
And you're working on it.
Yeah, and this is part of it. What we're doing here is sort of like part of the developing connections, as well as the methodology and documentation of how it's working. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're working on it and kind of exploring it right now, like we're doing it, and at the same time creating documentation around how to do it.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so if Michael's not coming back, I guess okay, Ali,
Yeah.
would you listen to me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I'm also enjoying the conversation. I really liked what you said about being a writer and storytelling, because I think changing the stories, the narratives kind of that we share with each other about how things are, why they are the way they are, and yeah, just in general, like perspective on the world, perspective on humans, perspective on nature, is just so important.
I hear you saying that like what I said about storytelling, and that you feel that changing the narratives and changing the perspectives on our relationship with each other and the world is very important.
Yeah. And also around what Edwin said around empathy and having empathy, like activists interested in empathy, I feel like I'm the right person in a way, because I'm already very much, I know NVC and I'm kind of using it, and it's like an integral part of how the governance system of this movement is designed, that empathy is kind of a big part of it. At least that's the way how I read it. And yeah, so and I think, yeah, dialogue definitely is the way to go. And yeah.
What I understand you saying is that talked a bit about how Edwin mentioned that he wants to get involved with activists who are interested in empathy, and that you feel you're an ideal person for this because you're already kind of executing it in your day-to-day life, and that's you already kind of see it around you, and you feel like that's a very important thing for dialogue.
Yeah. I'm just in the group I'm in, and I'm also feeling how people are so interested to learn about it and to explore more about it. And I'm already planning an event to kind of teach them about empathy circles, and to also kind of have a space to kind of deal with the things that are going to happen, because during actions things may happen that are maybe not so nice. And to really have a way to kind of metabolize whatever happens in empathy circles, probably.
So you have a group that you've already discussed this with, and you've already explored the usage of empathy circles. Oh, where do you live, Kirsten?
Potsdam, near Berlin.
Potsdam, okay. And yeah, so at the same time, you want to have a space that you can use where you can figure out. What I understood was like worst case scenarios or contingencies where things might not be good because of the repercussions of what you might be doing.
Mm-hmm. I didn't understand. Like, I don't know, repercussions of what I'm doing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I didn't understand. You can go again.
Yeah, it's more around when there are actions. There may be interactions with people on the street. There may be interactions with police even, and some of them may be in some way either disturbing or maybe even traumatizing in some way, and really having a space for metabolizing that. Not, yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping also for.
So I heard you expand a bit more on that. So, there might be cases where there might be interactions with police or other people on the streets, and you want to have a safe space to metabolize those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, and to be able to integrate them so they don't kind of stop you from doing anything or linger within you, that can be kind of, I don't know, even harvested for whatever may be positive and helpful about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you want to use the safe space to also, take whatever those experiences might be and take the positive out of them and not let them have lingering harmful effects.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Kirsten.
Yeah.
Potsdam.
4 minutes.
Oh, looks like it's just you and me. Oh no, okay, so yeah, I mean, so it's just to go back to something that was mentioned earlier. A different kind. I think it was you who mentioned that. Made me think about how there's an idea of a different kind of activism or protests. The traditional look at it as people out in the streets throwing Molotov cocktails or creating barriers, and there's tear gas and riot police. And I'm not a fan of that approach. I understand how things can get to that point, especially in places in the world that are worse off. But it's adversarial, and I don't feel like it's effective. We do need a different kind of style of protest.
Mm-hmm. So you're resonating with a different style of protest versus a very confrontational, fighting, tear gas. So you're kind of resonating with that looking for a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Not so adversarial.
Yes, exactly. The thing is, it's hard because, just to go back to the words I used to describe how I feel about climate change, and I honestly said the two things that first came to my mind, and they were frustration and anger. And I feel like there's a torrent of anger in so many people around the world, and you see them flare up. For example, in France with Gilets jaunes. I don't speak French. The yellow vest people. And so that the passion is there, the desire is there, for change. You just have to figure out a way in which you can channel people's anger, because I think people's anger is useful. It does have a useful purpose, but it has to be channeled towards something positive.
Mm-hmm. So you're seeing that there is all this anger throughout the world, and people wanting change, and that anger, you don't want to dismiss it. You just want to find a way to channel it in a productive way.
Mm-hmm. And I think a great way to channel that anger is, I think the reason people feel angry is because they feel hopeless and they feel like they're not being listened to. And so they feel, what the hell am I going to do? I'm just going to tear down the city I live in, because that's the only way that's the only way I feel like I'll be listened to. And I honestly think that just having something like an opportunity to just express your feelings in some kind of forum with people who are in positions of power can start dialogue and can create a kind of protest that would be less harmful. And this is something that governments should pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. So if people don't feel like they're heard, and they get angry and they start feeling hopeless, and you do see that having dialogue, that actually the government should actually be supporting this dialogue to kind of give people, and that would sort of give people hope as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just Kirsten made me think about this too, is things about governments is, she didn't say this, but it made me think of it. The thing about governments is they have this ability to take things like this, internalize them, and then nullify their effects. They almost neutralize them. So it has to be done in a way in which it isn't just a PR opportunity where this person can just shake hands with this person and look at our government, it's so great, they listen to us, and then turn to status quo. It has to be done in a way in which they're not at the head of the power imbalance.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about that the government can listen. Oh, Rick asked for help. So I think we're going to go into the breakout, but
okay,
go back. But it's really about just not squashing people getting hurt and then squashing, you know. So we're gonna go back to the breakout.
Of oh, hi, Edwin.
Oh, hi.
I was wondering if we are going to go back to the main group to do the feedback. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, we're going back. Here we go. I had to push the right buttons, so we're all coming back.